What's up, guys? I can know whatever you're here. And I'm gonna start a new series today. A series that I haven't done, that I've been wanting to do very, very long time. I have a majority of it planned out, but we'll just see where it goes. Don't worry, I'm not gonna stop making my What If Deku Was the Only Male to Quirk. I'm going to continue making this one and that one. Alright, I'm gonna get straight into it. You already know what this is by the title. So, we're gonna look at Izuku, this is around after, I won't say it's after. Yeah, it's after the, Heroes Rising, or Two Heroes movie. Which are the one where they fought 9 in. Where Bakugo and him both fought 9. We're gonna get straight into it. So after they fought 9, and Izuku's in the hospital with the majority of his class, other than the ones who were actually in the hole protecting the civilians. Forgot who that was, to be honest. But he's in the hospital. He was the last one. Him and Bakugo are the only two left in the hospital because they had the most serious injuries. Except in the fact that they both broke both their arms, as well as them getting shot through the body, crushed up against walls. They were pretty badly beat. Broken ribs, I'm sure of. So they took a while to recuperate, and every day Ochako would visit Deku, and soon they finally started to go out. And they've been going out for a couple months now. And it's nearing the end of the first year of UA. Now, UA is not a college, it's a high school. I'm not going to change that at all. But everything will happen in the second year. A lot of things will happen the same way in the first year. But just different things will happen first. Different things will lead on to different stuff. As we see Izuku, who is coming back to the dorms after going out to go visit his mom after he got out of the hospital. Well, not got out of the hospital, after he hasn't seen her since the 9 incident, which has been a long time. So we finally go see her. She's happy about meeting him and seeing him. He's okay, things like that. As he would now take his way back to the dorm rooms. As he would arrive, everybody sitting in the common room. He asked everybody, hey, you guys, where's, Uraraka? They all say, oh, we don't know, she's probably in her room. As Deku nods, he makes his way upstairs. As he gets there and he opens the door, he sees his best friend, Bakugo, ramming his girlfriend, Ochako. As they were getting into it. They've been at it for like 10 minutes already before he even got there. As he walked in and he just stopped. He just froze. He was still smiling, but he just shut down. It's like he mentally died. Give me a quick second. Yeah, so as I was saying, he just sat there with a smile, with his eyes widened, confused, angry, and just out straight heartbroken. As Ochako would scramble getting the cover over and says, Deku, you weren't supposed to be home today. As Bakugo says, who gives a damn about the stupid nerd? Then out of nowhere, Deku's eyes would begin flashing a bluish. Instead of his normal green, they would be blue. As he felt so much anger. So much to the point he started to... Give me a second. As I was saying, his body looked like he was powering up. As Bakugo thought it was his quirk being activated, so he got on defensive. But he's already got his shorts on, and he's ready to fight. But he sees that Deku is not normal. he would usually be like a lightish blue aura and like lightning sparks. Instead, this is a pure like mist around him. It's not stopping, it's not sparking, it's just non-stop. And Deku would scream at the top of his lungs. Everybody in UA heard it, as he would shoot up a energy that broke through the roof, shattering everything around him, as his eyes were rolled to the back of his head, and he's just raging. He's berserking. He's not in control. As he just teleports and punches Bakugo in the face, already breaking bones throughout his entire body. And Deku's also damaging himself a lot, more than he thinks. He's shooting blood out of every part of his body. His eyes are bleeding, his ears are bleeding, his mouth is bleeding. As he just continues to beat down on Bakugo, breaking every bone in Bakugo's body. And each hit is a shockwave. As everybody ran up to the commotion and just sees Deku beating down on Bakugo outside. And they see how much blood is everywhere from Bakugo bleeding. As Kirishima would run up and try and stop the fight, as he would get punched, but before he got punched, he activated his hardening cord. But it did nothing, it just shattered like glass, knocking Kirishima out cold. Bakugo just left there being battered and beaten. Then All Might would arrive, finally. All Might would try and stop the situation, at first talking and then getting punched out of the way. In his buff form, of course, so he would take the hit. But now, he was fucked up from it. He could already feel that the amount of power coming off Midoriya is absurd. He thinks it's his quirk just evolving even more than it should, but it's not. He doesn't know this. So he would try to fight Midoriya, and this time he would be able to land a kick on the unexpected Midoriya because he's in the middle of a rage. He's not fighting normally. He's fighting more of a brutal person. He has no posture, no nothing. He's just fighting like an animal. As Midoriya would get up from the rubble of being kicked in the wall, everybody's shocked that All Might actually hit this student. As Mr. Aizawa, Nezu, Midnight, all of them would arrive to see Izuku in a rage. As the smoke clears, they see him just standing there looking down. As he looked up, they saw he had no pupils. His pupils were gone. And he would just scream and scream and scream at the top of his lungs. As his hair would start to turn yellow instead of green. As now at this point his muscles are exploding. They're no longer just bleeding. You could see them explode. But they would just keep being brought back and explode again and again and again. All my thinking is, does he feel pain? As he's confused about the situation. Now we look at everybody who's trying to figure out what the fuck happened. As Mr. Aizawa has already taken Bakugo and he's trying to get him to recover as fast as possible before he dies. As Kirishima is not that okay. He's hurt, but not as severely. Because he did have his hardening cord. As Deku's still in his rage. This is when Midnight tries to put the smoke or her hormones around him to make him fall asleep. But they just keep getting blown back from the pure power and pressure from his energy. As he would start to form a greenish blast in his mouth. Everybody confused on what this is. Then he'd look up and just slam it down. As he did, he shot a green blast. This green blast would cut through everything in its path and cut a mountain in half. Then he would gain his eyes back. As he would just pass out and smash into the ground. Now we look at All Might, who was thinking, young Midoriya, what happened? Confused as all hell. And Mr. Aizawa was even more confused because he tried to stop the quirk of what she thought was the quirk, but it wasn't. It didn't stop. It just kept going and going and going and going. Now, everybody's reaction, they still don't know what happened until they finally look up to where everything went down. They see Ochaku was getting dressed, and they see the room busted out, but they don't see where Bakugo could have came from. And this is when Ida, being the smart one, put it all together. As he's just shocked, utterly confused on how Uraraka could do this to Deku. As he said that out loud, everybody asking, what are you talking about? He says, don't you find it suspicious when Deku just gets so mad and just beat up on his best friend? As they say, yeah, a bit. And then he points up at Uraraka's room and he says, look, as they all see Uraraka still changing, as some don't get it right away, but some do, as they're entirely shocked. Todoroki was one of the first ones to get it, other than Ida. As he informs All Might of what happened, but All Might is still confused and scared, because he realized he couldn't stop Deku at all. He realized that Deku was too strong. He also realized that that amount of anger isn't worthy to become the #1 hero. So we're going to look at Deku, who is in his mind, as he's still super angry. He's just so angry that he can't get over it. As he's just sitting there cussing himself out. Just imagining him killing Bakugo over and over and over and over again. As he didn't even think about forgiving nobody. He just wanted to kill Bakugo. Then he would start to calm down a bit. But he realized that he's still angry. He doesn't even know what he's angry at anymore. He's just so damn angry. Now give me one split second. As Deku still is so angry, but he wakes up and first thing he realizes, he's chained. He's not able to move that much. As he starts to pull up, but he realizes he's chained down. Then he pulls a little harder and he snaps it very, very easily without using his quirk at all. Now, this is when All Might would come into the room and ask Izuku what happened. As Izuku would explain everything down to the smallest detail. But what caught All Might off guard is that he never said anything about attacking Bakugo. All he said he felt was just anger, pure and utter anger. And him telling Deku that, young Midoriya, do you realize what you did to young Bakugo? Deku says, what do you mean, All Might? What did I do to Bakugo? As he explains that Bakugo is on life support right now. He barely lived from your attack. He has a lot of permanent injuries. But he's gonna make a full recovery, just a lot of scars. Deku's just shocked by these words. But he remembers that what Bakugo did and what Uraraka did as he would start to get angry. And his hair would start to flicker. Not green, but a yellowish blonde. As All Might would take a tad bit notice to this, but not worry about it. As he tells Deku to calm down and that he wants to talk to him about the Quirk. He says, young Midoriya, remember what we said whenever I first gave you my Quirk? Deku said, yeah, you said I have to become the #1 hero, and I can never use it for evil, right? I'm not sure if that's what it really said, but I know that he had to become the number one hero. I'm just throwing in my own little thing, okay? As he said, that's right, and what you just did broke that promise you made to me. As Deku would look down, he says, oh, I get it. You want your Quirk back, don't you? As he would say, it's not like that, it's just that I don't trust you with that amount of anger that you released. And also that power. It's too much for you. Did you see your body? My body? As Deku would realize that he felt sore all over. As he would say under his breath, I guess you're right, All Might. So he would pluck a hair and just tell All Might to take it. All Might shocked, saying, you don't want a second chance? Deku immediately saying, nah, I don't need the Quirk. Besides, it's the end of the year, right? As that was the last day of the first year of UA. As everybody would have stopped talking to Uraraka after that. As they will all shun her and almost belittle her a bit. Some of the girls saying that she was lucky to have such a nice person. As Uraraka would feel bad, but the only thing she regret was getting Bakugo involved in her relationship matters, because she wanted to break up with Deku, but just didn't know how. Now, Deku finally gets out of the hospital as he walks to the UA dorms, as he's getting all of his stuff out of there to go back to his house. This is when there's a knock on his door. As he would open it, he'd see Uraraka's, and in the split second he opened the door, he slammed it shut. And he slammed it with so much force, it broke the door's hinges, almost making the door fall off, but it just stayed there. Uraraka shocked, and it caused a pretty loud bang, causing like at least 5 different people to come upstairs, being Momo, Jiro, Mina, Toru, Hakagure, and Denki, why not? As they would come up and ask what the commotion was, they'd see Uraraka standing in front of Deku's half-broken door. As they would ask what happened, and she says, I don't know, I just knocked on the door. Whenever he opened it, he just slammed it shut. As they would all say, but Deku's not like that. Deku just doesn't want to see anybody right now, because he's thinking he can't be a hero anymore. So he's packing all his shit and he's leaving UA. But then he remembered that in the hospital, he didn't use his Quirk to get out of those handcuffs. But they also wore Quirk erasing handcuffs. So did he use a Quirk, or did he use his own physical strength? Neither here or there, though. As everyone would see Deku leaving, as Todoroki, Kirishima, Sugar Rush guy, I forgot his name, and Ejiro. Well, no, that's Kirishima. I wouldn't say Ejiro, but I would say, what's his name? The tentacle guy. Now, you may be wondering when Aries is going to come into this whole play. She'll come in very shortly. But that's probably very shortly. Might come in on this part. Might not. But Deku is now walking out of UA as Mr. Nezu, Aizawa, and All Might are there. As they've wished Deku goodbye, and Mr. Aizawa would ask if Deku would be coming back for class 2A. As Deku would just say he doesn't know. He'll make up his mind when he gets there. Now, this particularly second year is going to last longer than most. They're going to give them a full year out of school. but they still have to do certain subjects and things like that to stay in school, to make sure they don't go stupid while they're not in school. So Deku would have left, and he was sent all of the stuff he needed to be sent. Which was like a 2 foot tall stack of papers that he would finish fairly easy to his surprise. Like the first month out of school, he finished them. He realized that his intellect has shot up drastically. And over time, he started to notice his strength. And he remembered the amount of power he felt before he blacked out. As he would try to use that power again, using the sparks from One for All, which would help him, but only give him enough power to use the All for One Quirk. Not All for One, One for All, my bad. Only use All Might's Quirk. As Deku would start to change over time. He noticed his green hair was starting to turn blackish at the top, and it would slowly move its way down. And so he was fine with it, and he also started working out a lot more. Instead of doing All Might's bullshit training of just picking up trash and moving it around, he started doing his own training of, instead of moving trash, moving heavy stones. He realized that once he blacked out earlier, he's been able to pick up at least 1,000 more pounds than he would. And he would start to meditate. And over meditation, he wouldn't notice, but his mom would, that he would get a whitish mist around him. She wouldn't know what it was, so she wouldn't bother him about it. But one time she took a picture of it. And whenever Deku was done with his meditation, she showed it to him, and he was confused, as he never felt anything like that. Now, this is not Ultra Instinct. This is the false Super Saiyan, not the one with the yellow glow. No, my bad, mist form. Yeah, it's the mist form. As this would only a 2 times boost to his power. Not strong enough to really do anything. But Deku has, over the 3 months, has let his hair grow. He noticed that it's no longer curly, it's more spiky. Not like Kirishima's, but it's downward spiky. And it spikes out to the side sometimes. And he's let his hair grow down a lot. Almost to his back. Well, down to his waist. That's as far as it's grown so far. As he would train, he's really built. He's almost the size of All Might, but not the same height and not the same amount of muscle, but more or less a shorter, less muscular version of All Might. That's his normal form. As he would change a lot. His voice would change. He no longer sounds like the happy-go-lucky Izuku Midoriya. He sounds more of a angered and serious person. As he would now be able to activate a mist form on will. This being the 4-month mark. The 5th month, he discovered False Super Saiyan. As he would train with False Super Saiyan quite a lot, to the point where he would be able to use it in his sleep. And he's mastered it. It's always on. Finally, he figured out how to go Super Saiyan. The way he figured it out was, got a tingling in his back whenever he was meditating. He just focused on it. Kept focusing on it for 1.5 hours straight without stopping, until his hair finally turned a golden yellow, surprising him a lot. As Deku would now be in Super Saiyan, but not knowing that he's in it. He's just focusing on tingling feeling in his back. As now he would open his eyes and look at his body, as he would see a yellowish aura in front front of him, all over him actually. And he would test everything he could actually to figure out what type of thing this gave him. As he would go outside and punch a 500-pound rock, which he would usually just dent and crack sometimes. But this time, whenever he punched it, he punched straight through it. So he tested his strength some more by going to a heavier rock, this being a 1-ton rock, punching it, going straight through it. So he's now got a grasp on the power. As I was saying, as he would now catch a small grasp of his power, he's only figured out he can punch through 1-ton rocks. He doesn't even know the full capability of it yet. All he knows is that he's incredibly physically strong. He hasn't even figured out how to launch a ki blast yet. He doesn't even know how to master his ki. He doesn't even know how to build it up. All he knows is that meditation is a good way to get his ki. Well, not ki, but charge up. He doesn't realize that he can do it without the meditation. All he has to do is really focus. And soon, he would think of going beyond Super Saiyan. Just getting him the buff up form. But because he's so smart, he's already noticed the flaws of it. He's noticed that because of his speed that he had in Super Saiyan 1, this new Super Saiyan form dropped that for power. He doesn't need more power. Or he needs a mix of both. So he decides to stay in Super Saiyan 1. Now, Izuku's changed quite a lot, and his mother's noticed it. He used to have green hair, relatively short, and now he has black hair, black long hair, relatively tall, and a lot more, how would I put it, serious. He's no longer carefree. He's no longer so positive. He knows about the terrible things about the world, and he's not afraid to tell it to a child, pretty much. Anyways, he would now 6 months more would pass of him just training on Super Saiyan 1. As now, this is whenever UA would start up the second semester. I won't say semester, but second year. As everybody's going to class, well, everybody that was in class 1A is going to class 2A, being kept in the same class, with the same teacher, just being taught more things about heroes instead of staying stuck in classrooms. They're going more internships and more work details. As this is when the door would open and a tall, buff, black hair man would walk in. As Aizawa was confused as everybody else, Bakugo has made a recovery over 1 year, and he got out the 8th month of Deku's training. Deku put this man on life support for 8 months straight. And Bakugo still has wounds and bandages, but he's used to them now. And Ochako has fully made it official of dating Bakugo. As Deku would walk in and just sit in the back of the class. And this is when roll call will start, as they go down the list and they finally get to the unknown man. As they would call his name, Izuku Midoriya, he'd say, "Here." As everybody would look back in shock. As Ochako would say, "Is that some sort of joke? You're not Izuku. He used to be smaller, and he had green hair." As he would say, people change in a year, especially with cunts and whores like you. As she is shocked, Bakugo getting pissed about what this guy has just said. As he would stand up and try charging Deku, Deku will grab him by the face and lift him up off the ground and have a sinister smile on his face. He would begin laughing. To the point where he just slammed Bakugo's face into the wall repeatedly. 10 times, in fact. To the point where Bakugo's face was just gushing blood. He dropped Bakugo. Everyone's shocked. Mr. Aizawa was sitting there trying to erase this kid's Quirk, but it didn't happen. as he would begin sitting back down. Choco would tap him on the back, him turning around and saying, "Why the hell did you touch me?" He would begin to float, and she'd start laughing. He says, "What are you gonna do now that you're floating, huh?" As he would begin to float forward, but not like he was floating, more or less he was flying. Over these 6 months, he learned key control, and he's figured out that he doesn't need to meditate to get his key. It took him a while to figure that out, actually. He figured out the last month for oh my bad, I just forgot what I was about to say. The last month of his training. And now this is when people would start to notice a very, very big difference, as they would question Izuku about certain things that only Deku would know, and they figured out that it actually is him. As now some people are curious on what happened. As Deku would say, he grew up. He's tired of living a childish fantasy. Things like that. Now we're gonna cut to All Might, who is looking at the roster, as well as Nezu, who's looking at the roster for Class 2A. As they would go down the list and they see Izuku Midoriya. As All Might is shocked, as well as Nezu. As they say they want to pay a trip to to the office. Not office, but to the room. As they would get there, they would see a Choco carrying a very injured Bakugo out of the classroom. And they would ask what happened. And Choco saying that Izuku attacked him. As All Might would be pissed, so would Nezu, being sort of pissed, but I won't say that pissed. He'd just be slightly mad about it. About the fact that his student was attacked. Then they would get in the class, they'd look over everybody and see, and then they'd ask where Izuku was. As Izuku would stand up. And All Might's in his small form. Actually, he lost the power. Well, he's in his buff form. He's got a hour time limit. And he's trying to keep the secret of him being weaker because he retired hidden, so he doesn't get jumped, or no major villains will come in and attack this school, thinking that, oh, All Might's weak, we can get leverage. So he's using his buff form as a bluff, knowing that he can only last an hour in a fight. As All Might would ask for Izuku, which this big black hair man would stand up as he sees, give me a second, as he would see this man stand up and start walking towards him. Now, there is no tail. There's only just the long hair, as well as the massive amount of muscle, but not the same height as All Might is. He's at least a foot shorter than All Might. He's almost 7-8 foot tall. So he's 6'2". I'm gonna say 6'2", All Might 7'2". As All Might would be looking down and just ask, "Who are you?" As Deku would say in a very serious but somewhat angry tone, "I'm young Midoriya, as you could call me, or Izuku Midoriya." As he'd look at All Might with so much anger, as well as pissed off and seriousness, that it shook All Might to his core, and he's asking, stuttering, "Well, what happened to you, young Midoriya?" As he changed, as he said, "A lot of things, All Might." As he'd walk back to his seat, everybody's still looking at him. As this was when the class would start, and they say, "Oh, well, we're gonna do a Quirk assessment test, and we're gonna compare it to your last scores and last year. Hope you all did training over the year you were out." All Might looking at Bakugo only having 2 months to train. because he got out the 10th month of being in the hospital. And All Might has been thinking about giving Bakugo the quirk. And Deku is really standoffish. He's giving everybody the cold shoulder. Nobody's really getting close to him because they feel like they don't know who it is. They feel like it's a whole different person, which it is. This is when they would finally get outside, and Deku's wearing this instead of the uniform that he was given because he said that the uniform was too tight, too hard to move in. As they would throw the ball to Bakugo, asking Bakugo to throw it, considering he only had 2 months to train. Bakugo throwing it doubled his score from last year. I'm pretty sure his score was like 758, 759, something around that. He got to 1,800, okay? 1,800. As Ochako would get infinite, and everybody else would almost double their score, if not triple it. Then it would finally get to the one and only everybody's really waiting for. Especially All Might, considering that he knows he took the quirk back. It's been far too long for him to have it. As Deku would ask, "Can I get a heavier ball, please?" Shocking them, considering that everybody thought the ball was relatively heavy. They all thought it was at least 50 to 80 pounds. As Aizawa would say, but it's 50 to 80 pounds. They don't really know the exact number. As he would say, "Yeah, I know, and it's way too fucking light." As he would crush it in his hand. Shocking them even more. All Might wondering if he's done fucked up, because he sees the amount of power this kid possesses, and he's starting to think that he's working with All For One. Because he knows there's no way this kid has a quirk. He was quirkless. There's no way. No way in hell. As All Might would grow a bit on guard around him. As they finally give him a heavier ball, made by Cinnamon Toast, being 120 pounds. As Deku would say, the ball's still too light, but it'll work. As he asks Aizawa, full strength or base form. Everybody's shocked to say he said base form. And Aizawa said base form, I guess. As he would throw the ball, shattering, just completely shattering the sound barrier, making a massive bang. As the ball would get over 100,000 meters. Leaving All Might shocked, as well as everybody else, because he said base form. Does that mean he's stronger than this? As they would ask, Aizawa would ask him to go to his strongest form. Him saying, "I'm not doing that. You'll find out when you need to know." As he would begin walking away towards the dorms. Because instead of just living off campus, he decided to live in the dorms to make shit easier. And he still has his nerdy habit, but instead of making it about heroes, he makes it about powerful villains. And he makes it about a lot of different things. And he still loves his thing about reading books. He still has some hobbies, but his whole personality's changed about everything. Everything entirely. As Deku's in his room, he hears a knock on the door. As he opens it, this being 3 different girls. And no, I'm not making a harem. I'm not making a harem. It's going to be one ship and one ship alone. As this being 3 different girls, being Momo, Mina, and Jiro. As they were all 3 very curious on what happened that incident that year ago. Why did he spark up like that? Because the pro heroes just chopped it up to him losing control. Or having a quirk malfunction. Or those stop at age 11 or 12. So the class didn't believe it. So Momo would ask Deku what happened then. As he says, "It doesn't concern you. Now can you please leave?" As he would go to shut the door, this is when Jiro would stop it, asking to know more about what he did over the year, in return for knowing what they did over the year. Deku then replying with, "Why the hell would I want to know what y'all did over the year? Besides, all I did was just train and train and train. Nothing special." As they would start to get a tad bit agitated, Mina just says, "We just want to know more about you, damn jerk." As Deku would say, gritting his teeth, and he says, "Fine, come inside." As they would come inside, as he would ask why they want to know more about him. What's so special? As they ask what really happened the incident that day. Because they know that Uraraka did something, but they don't know what. All they know is that they made you really mad. Because the teachers say that, she wanted to break up with you and you got really pissed off. But we don't believe that at all. None of us do. Nobody in the class does. Because we know you're not like that. As he say, "Oh, so that's what the teachers told y'all." As he would say, "The dumb bitch cheated on me with Bakugo." As they would stop for a second and say, "Bakugo? What happened to Kachan?" So he'd get pissed, slamming his hand on the table, breaking it in two, and "Don't say that goddamn name." As he would had a yellowish aura around him as it faded. As they would all question, what was that? As he would grab his head and say, "Don't worry about it." As he would ask them to leave. As they left, he would grab his head and show a lot of anger. Now this is when All Might would have talked to all of the teachers, including Aizawa, and start to tell them about One for All. But he'd only tell 3 teachers. President Mike, Aizawa, and some of the other ones. Not going to mention the last one because they're irrelevant. As he would explain all of things about his quirk and how he's thinking about All for One. But then All for One was arrested, but unknown to the public, All for One has escaped. He's been out for a while now. He's actually been out for 6 months. This being half a year ago. So, All Might is thinking that Deku helped break All for One out to get power. Give me a second. As All Might would explain about All for One's breakout, that they were very intelligent, whoever helped. And they know that Izuku's very smart. So they're starting to plan a way to confront Izuku, as well as find out whether or not he really did work with All for One. As All Might would suggest jumping him in the middle of the night, arresting him, and then bringing him into question using a mind control quirk. Who mind control quirk, you may ask? The one and only Shinso. As they decide to actually go through with this plan, as they would move in the same night that Izuku was talking to Momo, Mina, and all of them. And now they don't plan to go in through normal means. They plan on going straight through the walls, handcuffing him with Quirk erasing quirks, not erasing quirks, cuffs, chains, as well as using Aizawa's erasing quirk. And they got a couple other pro heroes to help, Miracle, Endeavor, and quite a lot to help out because they know the strength. As Izuku feels their key already moving in, and before they break in, he just says, "Come in through the front door, please. Try not to have my room destroyed." Leaving everybody who was planned out on top of the roof shocked as they would actually listen to what he says, but this being in the middle of the night, so everybody's asleep. as they would come in, All Might asking Midoriya to come with them, as he says, why the hell should I come with y'all? As he was already sitting down looking at them, as All Might says, because you're working with the number one villain, all for one. As Deku would begin laughing and look up while smiling and says, oh, really? And what made you think that, All Might? As they would be caught off guard by him laughing and smiling about this accusation. And he says, so, what do you plan to do, huh? How do you plan to prove that I'm working with All for One? Will mind control you and ask you questions. As he says, okay. As he lets them put the cuffs on him, as well as a lot of chains, like a lot. And he's walking out of the dorms, and this is when somebody would come down and see them taking him out of the dorms. But they wouldn't follow him, they would just keep it in the back of their head, but wouldn't say anything. And the one that actually did this and saw this was Ochako. The next day, Deku's being questioned. Well, not questioned, but he just had to stay out of the dorms just in case he did anything. And in the morning, this is when everybody's in the common room, look with shocked expressions on their face, as Ochako was telling everybody that Izuku got arrested yesterday for being an asset to the number one villain. All for one. As they all said that, oh, but he's in jail. As Ochako would say, you didn't hear? Well, Jiro would say, well, I heard whenever Izuku was, well, not Izuku, but the teachers were talking about All for One escaping, and I also heard about a secret of All Might's. But she doesn't say that out loud, but she keeps it to herself. As now, they believe that Izuku's a villain. Everybody other than Jiro, Momo, and Mina, who went and talked to him last night, same night he was taken, all believe that he's a villain. As we look at Izuku, who's just sitting there in a chair. He didn't sleep at all. He just stayed up because he wanted to. And he's just meditating with his eyes open. This is when they bring Shinso in, All Might in, and Aizawa in, as well as Nezu, to write everything down. As well as a recorder, as well as some police officers on the outside listening. As well as another girl who looks into minds instead of reads them. Or forces someone to say something. Now this is when they would ask Deku a question. Before Deku answered it, he'd break the chains and then answer the question, which was, what is your name? He said, Izuku Midoriya. His eyes would go white, as this is when Shinso would begin the question, and he says, are you working with All for One? Why the hell would I work with him? Shocking All Might. Then All Might would ask Shinso to ask him how to get his power. As he would say, I don't know, it just appeared and I just trained with it. This is when he decides to kick himself in the foot, waking up, saying, if that's all, I'll be leaving now. And they say, wait, just to make sure you're not lying to us and you figured out a way to break it before anything, we'll have her search through your mind. As he would agree to this, she began searching through his mind by touching the back of his head with a lot of hair on it. She would look into his mind, and she'd feel so much anger that it's overpowering her. She falls to the ground, sweating. As Izuku looks down at her and he says, too much for you to handle, huh? You now know my pain. As they would ask, what the hell did you do to her? So he said, I didn't do nothing. As he would kick the door open and leave. So he's going back to his dorm room. This is when he finally gets to the dorms. As he opens the door, and he's just walking up the stairs. This is when he would be called a villain by Ochako. Bakugo included, and some of the other students, as he wouldn't even bat an eye to them. The next day of school comes about, Monday. As they'd be going into school, everybody's not even talking about him at the moment, until Ochako says something about Deku being a villain, and this being overheard by Monoma. Monoma began running his mouth to everybody, and I mean everybody in UA, including teachers and things like that. So the rumor spread that Deku is a villain, as he would be called a villain by everybody. Then Monoma would be saying, "Oh, this is exactly why Class 2B is better than Class 2A. Because of course, they have to have a villain in their class." They would just look at him and grab him by the face. Now, he would tighten his grip to the point where Monoma's eyes and ears would start to bleed as he just drops Monoma. Because Monoma tried to use his quirk to use Deku's, but nothing happened, leaving Monoma shocked as Deku was smiling the whole time while crushing this kid's face, making his reputation even more disgraceful than it already is. As he would finally get to class and sit down, this is when Aizawa would begin talking, and he hasn't heard the rumors yet, but he's heard people call Deku a villain for doing certain things, so he's not taking much notice to it, until the entire class is just calling Deku a villain, and Aizawa asked, finally, "Why is everyone calling Problem Child a villain?" As they would say, "Oh, because he's working with the number one villain, All For One." Aizawa's eyes widen and he says, "Please don't tell me one of you stupid brats overheard our conversation." As everyone pointed at Ochako and said, "Yeah, she told us what happened." As well as Jiro. But Jiro said that y'all had a plan to ask Midoriya certain questions and arrest him. As this all went down, Deku's just still sitting in the back, not even giving two flying fucks. But now Deku has found love. But it's with a new student that he's already knows before the entire class does, because he's seen her the entire year. They're not relatively dating, but they're about to be. She said once they get in school together, they'll date. Yes, he's okay with this. But he doesn't show her... He shows her love, but in somewhat of an aggressive way. He'd show her love, but she knows it's not his fault for being that aggressive, because he's already told her what happened. And so, not yet. That's for part 2. As the new student would get in class, as she would introduce herself as... what should I give her a name? Haruko. Her name is Haruko. Yeah, just Haruko. We'll make it Haruko. Her quirk. Her quirk lets people feel... Nah.